So I wanted to do a video on water clarity. So I'm going to do one before and after water change. So this is 1 week to the day since the last water change in this tank. The water isn't tinted. It's perfectly clear other than the micro bubbles. And the point of this is, if you get your filtration right, the amount of media you need for the tank right, everything's balanced, running the way it's supposed to, your water won't change colors. It'll stay crystal clear. In this tank we've got this Expertmatic filter, aerating and filtering the water. This gets cleaned weekly, every water change. I'm using it just to aerate and pull junk out of the tank. I'm not using it for biological at all. Then it's got an aqua clear. And then it's got an Eheim canister. And in the aqua clear, there's sponge and some ceramics. And in the Eheim, there's sponge, some ceramics, and some filter floss. So only one of these filters has floss in it, and it's still perfectly clear. But the sponge in the aqua clear, or any sponge for that matter, depending on the porosity, as it builds the biomass in it, the biofilm, the pores get smaller and smaller, which means it'll start taking smaller and smaller particles out of the water. So technically you don't need floss. I'm also using anoxic filtration. What anoxic filtration does is water slowly passes through it, and by the time the beneficial nitrifying bacteria on the outside of it, by the time the water goes through that layer of it, it's depleting the oxygen. So by the time the water reaches the middle of it, the oxygen is very low, and the bacteria that grow in there convert nitrate into nitrous oxide and nitrogen, which is gas off the top of your tank. So this is lowering nitrates naturally, and this isn't anaerobic. Nobody get confused. There's still oxygen in there. The oxygen is just low enough that the bacteria need extra oxygen, so they take O2 from the nitrate. Also, the media that's in there, just the way it's naturally made, carries a negative charge, so it's not just water slowly flowing through it, it's also pulling, because of its charge, stuff into it. So the stuff that's in your water that has a positive charge, it's pulling it in. This reduces phosphates, reduces nitrates. It'll improve your what's it called? I can't remember. It escapes me right now. Your TDS, total dissolved solids. And I'm not really going to go into all that because there's no way I could explain it as good as some other people. Anyways, that's the way it works, and as you can see, it does work. There's a lot of fish in here. They get fed twice a day, every day, plus treat days where I give them, brine shrimp or something like that. There's zero algae. The decor has never been cleaned. The back panel has never been cleaned. This tank is over 2 years that I've had it, and it's been running, and never once been touched. The only thing I cleaned on it is the front panel and the side panels, and this thing hasn't been cleaned in probably 2 months. And as you can see, I talked in another video about how important aeration and the oxygen level in your water is. The more oxygen you have in your water, the more efficiently the nitrifying bacteria work. And give you an example of how much the bacteria like water movement and oxygen, this glass right here is pretty clean, but if you look where the bubbler's blowing, let me turn it off, you can see it better. Right where the water is hitting that glass, you can see where the bacteria is starting to grow. So when I end up cleaning the glass in this tank, I'll do it after a water change. So all the stuff I knock off the glass gets sucked into the filters. But that just goes to show how important oxygen in your tank is. The process of oxidizing ammonia, converting it and all that pulls more oxygen out of your tank than these fish do. So keeping the oxygen level as high as possible is very important. Also, getting oxygen into your gravel, whatever substrate you use, is important. You can see how shallow the gravel in this tank is. It's maybe 1.5 inches, except for where the fish have moved it, piled it up a bit. And I only use gravel so water can work its way into it as much as possible. When you use a deep substrate, water can't flow down through it because it's sitting on the bottom of the tank. Plus, the beneficial bacteria at the surface, the top inch or so, are pulling the oxygen that does get into it out of it. So at the bottom of your substrate, there's no oxygen. All the bacteria has pulled out all the oxygen, which means it's gone anaerobic. And the anaerobic bacteria, through a process called assimilatory denitrification, converts nitrate and nitrite back into ammonia to get its oxygen to be able to survive. And this, if it gets bad enough, it can actually ferment and you'll have all sorts of problems. Plus, that's where all your algae comes from. All that ammonia being produced in your substrate is a food source for the algae. So this substrate gets vacuumed every week. I get in there, get everywhere, I move stuff, vacuum under it. I make sure that this substrate stays oxygenated at all times. Anyhow, I'll do the water change and then show you how much different the tank, the water looks. See if you guys can see a difference. So I've got the water change done, and this is what it looks like. Another thing I thought I'd talk about when I was filling it up, something I wanted to mention in other videos, is a lot of people don't like aqua clears because they say they won't restart after a power outage or something. But if you keep your tank full, a lot of people say, oh, I do keep my tank full. Well, I think we have two different opinions of full. So in my tank, that's how high I have the water. Where the water runs out of the aqua clear into the tank is underwater. That's maybe a half inch at best from the lip there. If you keep your tank that full, it will restart with no problems every time. Another thing I wanted to mention is the NOx filtration. People say, oh, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. That doesn't work. Well, Anoxic filtration has been around for decades. 330 million people in the United States drink, cook, bathe in water cleaned with anoxic filtration every day. Every wastewater treatment facility uses anoxic filtration to clean the water. When they release water out of a water treatment facility, it has to be under 10 parts per million nitrate, mandated by law by the government. And how do they do that is anoxic filtration. And you can imagine how high the nitrate is in sewer water. And they not only get it down below 10 parts per million, it's usually below 1 part per million when it leaves the facility using anoxic filtration. It's nothing new. Anoxic filtration, how it works, is taught in colleges to microbiology students. It's just the filter companies, they know about it. The only people that don't know about it are aquarium hobbyists. And why is that? Because if everybody knew about it and they used it, the vast majority of aquarium products, chemicals, all the stuff people buy, pads that they say take phosphates out of, stuff like that, would be useless. So you don't know about it because there's no profit in it. Anyways, I'm going to clean the glass and show you what it looks like after that. Alright, glass is cleaned. See, there's no more of the bacteria over there. Might have clouded the water a teeny bit, but it'll be gone in a few minutes. Thinking about the nitrates and the regulated by law 10 parts per million or lower that it has to be released into the environment or the people or whatever. Why is that? People in the aquarium hobby say, oh, nitrates 180, 100 plus is perfectly fine for fish. Yet the government won't allow it over 10 parts per million. Nitrates are not safe for your fish, let alone humans, your pets, whatever. Are they as bad as ammonia or something like that? No, obviously not. But nitrates definitely are not good for them. So if you want your fish to be as colorful as possible, as healthy as possible, with the least amount of maintenance on your tank, get your filtration right. Try the anoxic filtration. Do large enough water changes for your tank. This tank I could get away with smaller water changes, but every one of my tanks I do an 80% water change. And the reason that is because both the fish and the bacteria use the minerals and nutrients that come in with the fresh water. So it doesn't matter how low I get my nitrates with any type of filtration, there's no replacement for water changes. Anyways, that's it.